Hello and welcome to Into the Terminal Episode 3. My name is Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and joining me is my illustrious co-host, Scott McBrien.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
You're going to start us off by talking about some basic package management on Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
Definitely. All right, so today we're going to talk about installing software on Linux, particularly on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So we'll get into this a little bit later on in the episode, but everything is built off of packages within Linux, and those packages under RHEL are RPMs. So let's just dive in, and easiest thing to do is just to install a package. So let's do a DNF, because DNF is the package manager for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 and beyond. So let's do a DNF install. And then one of my favorite utilities that I put on all my systems is called bash completion. So the package is bash dash completion. Try and say that 5 times fast. So if we hit enter here, we'll actually see DNF go out to the registered repositories, and we'll find the bash completion package. It'll tell us if it's a 64-bit or a NoArch package, like in this case, the version number, where the repository is coming from, how big it is. So we'll go ahead and say yes to confirm the install. It's going to download that package from the registered repository. It's going to install, verify, and now if we were to log out and log back into the system, we would be able to use bash completion, which means that when you go to type in a command and you hit the tab key, it'll actually help you complete that command. Just like that. So one of the other major things that package managers are responsible for is keeping systems up to date. So we talk a lot about installing packages, making sure that our systems have the latest security vulnerability fixes, that kind of thing. So we're going to again use DNF, and this time we're going to see what updates are available on our system. So if we do a DNF list updates, so we want to list the available updates. It's going to go out again and pull all the available updates. We see that there's some updates to the SOS package, which has to do with troubleshooting, gathering system logs, that kind of thing. Vim, my text editor of choice. So it looks like there's 20 or so packages that are set up for that are ready for updates. So if we do a DNF update, this process will look much like the DNF install command, but instead it'll have the updates listed above. Something that's good to know here is that this doesn't actually install the updates until you hit yes, and then type the Y key, and then hit enter. And much like the install process, go ahead.
So, quick question: What if I didn't want to install all the updates, but I only wanted to install, say, that SOS update that you had mentioned earlier?
That's a great point. So if we do a no here, and then if we do a DNF update and then SOS, and then hit enter, then it'll show us the SOS package, and it'll tell us the target version. So if we hit a yes here, it'll only do updates on that one package. That's a great point, because not always do you want to update every package all at once. One that comes to mind is maybe the kernel package. You may not want to do a kernel update at the same time you update everything else for just various reasons. So if we go back to the previous command, if we just do a DNF update with no additional arguments or variables, that will actually update the entire system. So if we hit yes here, it'll go ahead and download the remaining packages, install them, and we'll apply them to our system. So with that, let's get into our deeper dive for today. All right, we did this a little bit differently this morning. We tried to go in and just, instead of instead of vamping or ad-libbing a lot, we went in, we did some commands, and now we want to circle back. The reason why I'm telling you all this is because we're really trying to experiment with this format. I think we've got something really special here. I think we've got something that'll be very valuable. Whether it's just a 3-minute quick, how do I do this and this and this, and then kind of more of a discussion, a little bit more of the banter that I told Scott was required before I'd agreed to do another show with him. But I think we're getting there. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I thought this morning was good, and now I'm ready to like go into a lot more depth and talk about some additional commands. I see that Eighth Doctor is already up and chatting, and he's wanting to see things like some short commands and remove and some other things that I know we're going to touch on.
So is it sad that I've been a systems administrator for over a decade and I didn't realize that you could shorten DNF commands? I mean, you can shorten just about every other command, but I never tried with DNF.
I mean, Eighth Doctor is special because he's so in tune with the Fedora community, so he knows all the upstream hotness. So I blame that.
There is that. And I mean, extra points to Eighth Doctor. He missed yesterday morning, but he was on last night asking some really good questions with our second showing of the episode. Oh, that explains a lot. Eighth Doctor apparently added that short command functionality. So the DNF package update that we kicked off in the first segment is still running. As you can see, this sometimes depending on the size of the packages or if there's any cleanup or additional scripting that needs to be run. If it's restarting any services in the background, sometimes it takes a few minutes. But Scott, I think this brings us a good. I think this buys us some time to talk about one of the major things we wanted to discuss about DNF, because longtime RHEL, Fedora, and CentOS users might be going, wait, DNF? I thought Yum was the main package manager. So do you want to kind of talk about what's changing there?
Sure. So we actually started shipping DNF as the default package manager in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. It's been the default package manager for Fedora in the upstream for quite some time. But with RHEL 8, you'll notice that if you look at maybe the product documentation, it still says Yum. And that's because there's a package installed that creates a symbolic link called Yum that actually points to DNF. And the reason that we did that was we want to make sure that when we introduce a change like a new package manager, that we don't affect people's operations and cause them to have their processes and procedures no longer function. So in RHEL 9, we will also still have that symbolic link called Yum. So all your Yum stuff will still work. It'll really be running DNF in the back end. But I think that maybe RHEL 10, we might see a change to that. Maybe it'll be beyond. I think deprecation means that it's slated for removal. It doesn't mean it's going to be removed, but we've identified that at some point we're going to remove the command Yum from our lexicon on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So for RHEL 9, all the documentation leads with DNF to help people get in the habit of utilizing it. I did have one other question for you, Eric.
Yeah.
So when we are installing packages and we do something like a Yum or a DNF update, would that be how we upgrade our system between dot releases of RHEL?
Should we or can we? Sorry, I missed the start of your question.
Well, so let's say 8.6 is released, and this box
Mm-hmm.
is an 8.5 box. If I just did a DNF update and applied all the updates, would my box now be an 8.6 box?
It would indeed. So minor releases. Let me caveat that just a little bit. With the standard configuration, yes. Anytime you do updates between, even if it traverses minor releases like 8.5 to 8.6, you will get the latest minor version of RHEL by default. However, that being said, there are ways you can version lock your either packages or your minor version. Red Hat Enterprise Linux has a concept called EUS, which is Extended Update Support. and those they're typically the even numbered releases, minor releases. So 8.4 is the current EUS. 8.6 is coming out here in a couple of months, and uh, and so you can actually stay on those extended update support releases. Some of the slower moving workloads, something like an SAP, for instance, uh, doesn't move as quickly and takes a little bit longer to certify their software, just because it's so extensive that it's not cost effective, it's not resource effective for them to update for every minor release. So we've got these EUS releases, typically the even number, where you can just jump from 8.4 to 8.6 and kind of more or less skip 8.5 altogether.
And I see in chat someone else is asking about how to block on a specific minor release. So there's this thing called extended update support, which is included in some RHEL subscriptions like RHEL Premium. But for others, like standard, it may be an additional purchase that you would have to get. And that's what allows you to kind of stay on a specific minor, and Red Hat will backport critical and important security errata into that channel of dot release. We will do that for a period of up to 2 years. And that's the recommended way. And it turns out that the way we accomplish putting you on that minor release is we create additional software repositories. So you unsubscribe yourself from the general RHEL 8 software repositories that are always kept up to date with the latest and greatest, and instead subscribe your systems to one of these EUS repositories that's tied to a specific dot release. So that's the recommended way of doing that. All right, so I see that our update has completed, Mr. Hendricks.
It has. So I want to introduce another command at this point for how do we remove a package. So maybe just for sake of argument, let's install maybe like the wget command or something. We can install that just real quick with the DNF install and do a wget. That'll install our wget package. But let's actually take a moment to introduce an additional argument. So if this is kind of a touchy issue, so let's think through this here. If we do a DNF install wget tac y or -y, that will bypass that "Are you sure you want to install" option. Now, something as minor and unimpactful as wget, probably safe to use the tac y. If you're doing a production server update in the middle of a maintenance window, maybe you want to keep that additional check in place. Traditionally, I've done enough work ahead of time to know what packages are coming in. So personally, I use tac-y quite a bit. How about you, Scott?
Yeah, I do, but again, you want to be careful because you're saying yes to all the questions, and like when we get to remove, I have an example of where that would be really, really terrible.
So I noticed that we do have a second tab here in the system. So maybe we'll come back to remove, but let's actually install wget with the web console. Unless the web
Let's
console
not,
is
because I
broken.
don't have easy access to the web console using this system.
Fair enough. So we'll include some docs in the show notes for how to manage software with the web console. Forgive us, this is a new lab system. It's only been live for about a week, so what's a live stream without a few kinks? So let's go ahead and do the tac-y with our install wget, so we can see the package install without asking us for any additional input. That's actually a great point, because that's another place where using tac-y is really helpful, is if you're installing packages using say a bash script. Oh, I didn't realize it was already included. Awesome. So the command that started us down this rabbit trail was doing a DNF remove. If we know how to install packages, we may want to be able to remove packages like nano. I mean, if you've got Vim, who would ever use nano, right? I didn't get anything out of Scott. Tried to start an editor holy war here, but he's not biting today. So let's do a DNF remove on wget. I actually don't think nano's included in the RHEL base image. But if we do a DNF remove, it's the reverse operation of doing a DNS or a DNF install. And you'll notice that it grabs not only the wget package, but also an unused dependency. So what DNF is really great at, and something that I've loved about it versus other package managers, whether it doesn't matter what distribution you're using, but DNF is exceptionally good at cleaning up after itself. So when we told it to remove the wget package, it also did a dependency check on all the other packages that were installed and said, oh, hey, this lib metalink package was a dependency for wget, but isn't used anywhere else. So if you're removing wget, you also don't need this library. So it does a great job of cleaning up after itself. So when we hit yes here in just a second, that will remove the wget package and any attached libraries that aren't used anywhere else on the system. So it's actually removing two packages for the price of one, I guess. So Scott, you mentioned with DNF remove, you had a tale of woe to share.
Oh yeah, so this is the minus y, right? So let me run it without the minus y. Maybe we want to remove bash completion that we installed earlier, but we make a typo. Hold on. Oh, nice. So it used to be that it would actually like happily remove bash, but now it's saying, hey, by the way, we're gonna remove a lot of things. Maybe that's not a great idea. Um,
Right.
but this would be an example of where minus y would be bad. Let me see if I can find another one.
Maybe the firewall D.
Yeah, we can try that. All right, so this would remove firewall D and its dependencies, but would keep NF tables, which is the actual thing doing the firewalling. Maybe, maybe not. But if we just said -y, it would automatically remove all this. We wouldn't get a chance to review the transaction and go, yeah, okay, I don't need any of those dependencies. It's cool to go ahead and remove them. So that would be an example of why not to use -y for those destructive operations like removing.
So you're saying I shouldn't remove my firewall without double checking myself on my public server?
I mean, there's probably a whole bunch of things like maybe you don't want to remove Python because a lot of things use Python, but you know you're root, so you can do what you want.
And that's actually a good point to make. If you're new to package management within Linux, regular users typically cannot do package management. It requires escalation to either the root account or something like sudo, which we'll cover here in a future episode. So we've got some great engagement in the chat today. A lot of conversation about managing different minor releases, that kind of thing. So I feel like we've got enough time today, Scott, to introduce a newer concept within DNF. So we've got this concept of modules, and what that does is it's kind of a different take on meta packages. So if you want to install, say, the Nginx web server, you can actually enable the Nginx module and then install the that's a fair point. Sorry, I was reading the chat and trying to explain modules at the same time. So if we do, say, a DNF module search Nginx, leave it search, or it may be list. I'm thinking it's list. So you can see that we've got multiple different versions of Nginx that are available to our RHEL 8.5 system, between 1.14 all the way up to 1.20. So Scott, do you want to walk us through the through kind of the concept that brought modules to bear?
Sure. So it used to be long, long ago that the version of a package that you got with RHEL was the version that was there for its entire lifespan. And keep in mind that the lifespan for RHEL is 10 years. So what Postgres you get today with a brand new RHEL 10 years from now looks super old and outdated. So in RHEL 7, we started with a thing called software collections, which was an attempt to provide kind of mid-release updates to packages. And we refined that a little bit more in RHEL 8, which we're carrying into RHEL 9 as well. And we now call that application streams. So application streams are a way that we can package together additional versions of software and offer it to people to install, but you can only have one version installed at a time. So we can see from this list that you had us pull, Eric, that Nginx 1.14 is the default. So if I just did a DNF install Nginx, I'd get 1.14. But maybe I want 1.20. So for that, I'd have to do a Dnf module install 1 Nginx 1.20, right? I have to specify the version number I want because it's not the default. And it'll go ahead and do the installation. And you'll notice that it has all these like crazy module extension things. That's how we keep track of what packages are affiliated with a module, so that we know that maybe there's a conflict between this module and another one. This is how we track the dependencies and conflicts and everything else about it. It's also how we make sure that we don't have more than one version installed at a time. Because if we have Nginx 1.18 installed, well, which one would really be the user bin or user sbin Nginx executable, right? So we only want to have one installed at a time. So do you want me to go ahead and install this, Eric?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So if we wanted to go to a different version, we'd have to remove Nginx 120, install Nginx, whatever version we were wanting to go to. All right, there you go.
Awesome. One other command I wanted to cover, and I know you can do this in DNF as well, but sometimes I think this command is easier. If you want to take a poll of what RPMs are actually installed in your system, you can use a command called go figure RPM. And if you do attack Q and attack A, it'll actually give you the output of every package that's installed within your system.
So yes, but I would recommend doing it the DNF way. Which is DNF list installed. You get a little bit of additional data from DNF list installed. Besides the package and the version, which you got from the RPM command, you also get the repository from which that package was installed. So Anaconda it was installed when the system was installed. The RHEL, this box is running GCP, so it's saying it was installed from their Red Hat update infrastructure.
So, like all things in Linux, there's multiple ways to get to your destination. That is a great point. DNF does give you a little bit more detail, and while an output like this may not be useful, what comes in handy is when you do like a DNF list installed, and then you use the pipe, so the vertical bracket, and then do like a grep for. Actually, we just installed Nginx, so let's do a grep for tac-i Nginx. So tac-i means that it's case insensitive. So if there's an uppercase letter or a lowercase letter, it'll accept them together. So you can see that we just installed Nginx version 120, and you can see the other packages that have Nginx in the package name. So this comes in very this definitely comes in handy when you're trying to determine I just built this new base system. What packages are installed? Do I need to update to a newer version? So this is great for doing basically taking inventory of what's installed or not installed on your system.
And Eric, I
So
actually use this a lot with list available. So
yeah, that's a great option.
DNF.
Forgive me, I'm like coughing up a lung over here. It's
Right.
80
So a lot of
degrees this
times
time last week.
I'll be needing to install something like a library for a development team or for an application, and I don't necessarily know exactly what the package is called. I just know that it's Python something. So if I do a list available, meaning it's not installed, and if I could spell available,
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
um, so available are packages that are not yet installed in the system, and then I just take that to the grep to then filter out to the ones that contain the string I'm looking for. So that helps me narrow down like what package it is that I'm maybe looking to try. And maybe you do two greps in a row, so you can even constrain that a little bit further if you know the library that you're looking for.
Definitely, yeah, because it's not always clear if there's like in some of these Python packages, there's a 3x or sometimes you get weird version numbering in your RPM command. So if you string together a series of greps, you can usually get down to a few packages and go, oh yeah, it was a dash instead of camel case or whatever the case may be. No pun intended there. So one last concept we wanted to introduce before we wrap today is DNF history. This was alluded to in the chat a few minutes ago. But DNF history basically tells you all of the operations that have been executed on the system. So if you look at the top, working your way down, you can see when we installed Nginx 120, when we did an update, when we removed wget. So you can go through and see what all has been installed or removed. Um, excuse me. What the action was, how many packages were affected, what the time and date was. So in this case, probably one of the most common use cases for using DNF history to at least to affect change. Obviously, this gives you a great auditing ability of what changes have been made to your system. Probably what I use the most is DNF history undo. So it is exactly what it sounds like. So if we do a DNF history undo and then let's say 13, read my mind. We decided we didn't want to remove wget after all. In this case, it'd be very easy to just do a DNF install wget. But what if we're looking at option number 6 there, where it affected 226 packages? Do you really want to try and reconstruct that command? Or you can use a history undo, and that will roll back any changes. So if we go ahead and run this command, you'll see it followed the same general process, and then I'll say, hey, here's wget. It was uninstalled earlier. Now it's going to be reinstalled, and then you'll notice it also grabs that dependency, that libmetalink package that it removed for us earlier. So when we type y and hit enter, wget will be restored to our system. And I mean, to be honest, those are the two main things I use DNF history for, just to see what changes have been made and doing any backing out any changes that may have broken something.
Oh yeah, being able to reverse something that I did by mistake is really handy. That's usually why I use DNF history undo as well.
Yeah, it's always funny when you do a DNF history undo and or when you do a DNF remove and then something on your system breaks. It's like, oh nope, let's back that change out. And
Yeah.
Eighth Doctor
Now,
brings up a good
I,
point. You can do a DNF history redo, which will reapply the same command. So if you have, I worked for a company that had some very interesting web servers that the web server stack was always updated independently of the rest of the system just because of weird dependency issues and the like. Um, so we had a yum command that we just basically copied and put into a file share and said that this is basically said run this command to get just the specific libraries and just the specific web server and do an update on that first. And then there were some other things that we had to do. But I wish I had DNF history at that time, because then I could just redo that update command. I could just find the last time I ran it, rerun that command, and like we showed early on with the SOS package, you can use that to just update specific packages. And with
So,
that,
Eric,
I
I know
think
that
we're go ahead.
we're right at time. I did want to talk about one other thing briefly, which you and I
Sure.
had discussed yesterday, which is auto updates.
Yes. Go for it.
So, so the question is auto update or not auto update. So you can set up your system to automatically apply updates as they're released um, and available in the repositories. Uh, but my choice is to not do that. And I'm sure there are some valid reasons why one might want to do that.
I could see maybe in a dev environment where you want to make sure you always have the latest packages to use an auto update. But I'm a recovering systems administrator and a bit of a control freak, so I don't, even in my home lab, I don't use auto updates. At best, I actually have a scheduled task that runs like on Saturday overnight or something, where I run the update process. So I'm a bit too much of a control freak. Been bit too many times by trying to automate things in the background to do auto updates, at least in a production environment. But just know that that functionality is available. There are definitely some valid use cases, but excuse me, but just know that that functionality is available.
Yeah, and the reason that I choose not to do it is because if I apply the update and I know when it is occurring, if there is a problem that arises because of that update, I now have a very clear understanding of what changed on the system compared to when I started having problems. So there's that kind of correlation between the update process likely caused this thing. And I can use something like DNF undo to undo that update. But if we're auto updating and it's happening at random times on the system, I have to figure out that that's what occurred while I'm already troubleshooting some kind of problem that has been brought to my attention. So,
Right.
so that's why I prefer not to do auto update, because it allows me to have that finer grain control, like Eric was saying.
Right. All right, so we are at time, but I hope you found this all very helpful. We covered a lot of ground today. We'll get some chapter markers and some additional resources in the show notes later today, and then we'll be back tomorrow. And I believe we're talking about administrating system processes, so a lot of system CTL, among other things. So tune in tomorrow morning for our for episode 4. We're plugging right along here on our daily release, and you can join Scott McBrien late at night for a re-airing of this content. He was giving a great speech last night about the importance of being a good systems administrator. I think he'll write a book at some point.
So we call that into the terminal after dark. Like what?
Yes. And then there's the after dark, the after party that usually goes on forever, where we just talk about random things. All right, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Tell a friend. I think this will be. I think we've got a format that'll work. If you think otherwise, please put it in the comments. We check those every day. Sometimes, like almost narcissistically, just hitting the refresh button, going, What do people think? What do people think?" So anyway, join us tomorrow. Really looking forward to bringing you another episode of Into the Terminal. Thanks, y'all.